Before I start my adventure into Sekiro, I want to talk about why I love difficult games so much. Last year I played through and beat Dark Souls for the very first time ever. Beating that game, one of the hardest games ever made, felt like I had made the pilgrimage as a gamer. The infamous and punishing game of Dark Souls is something that I have tried playing multiple times before, but would always stop roughly around the same point, which is right about here. But the last time I played, when I got to that same point, I pushed through and I am so glad I did. After that, it was just one challenge after another, and no matter how difficult some of those battles got, nothing ever felt impossible. I was just one dodge or a few lucky strikes away from claiming victory. Every obstacle required a few attempts just to understand the enemy's tactics and develop a strategy. Understanding a game to such a degree made me feel like a real gamer. Too many games today are just too easy and require little effort. You run in, clear out a room, and move on to the next. And aside from being exposed to a story, which is something that I do value in games, sometimes I want a bit of a challenge. So I wanted to make a video that showed my appreciation for games like Dark Souls. But before I go into why I love Dark Souls so much, I want to take some time to explain exactly what it is that makes Dark Souls so difficult. Released in 2011 from developer From Software, Dark Souls is a role-playing game set within a fantasy world. Now this RPG isn't so much about making choices and driven by story, it's about picking a class, leveling up your character stats, and managing different types of gear to be the most effective. Now the world of Dark Souls is complicated. So a long time ago, dragons ruled the world until these three beings discovered the power of fire and became godlike beings and overthrew the dragons. That's pretty much the nutshell version. But now, that fire that empowered the three ruling beings is starting to fade, and bad stuff is starting to happen, like humans are becoming these undead, mindless beings. And one of those undead, mindless beings that's not quite so mindless is you, the chosen one. And that's pretty much what the game is. So you go through the world slaying monsters and fulfilling a prophecy to either save the world or doom it, I guess. And I say I guess because Dark Souls has a vast lore, but it's really hidden within the game. So you really got to pay attention to the convoluted conversations with random NPCs, reading some of the item descriptions, and doing a good old-fashioned Google search. But the game and its developers know that you're not playing this game for its lore. You're playing for the challenging gameplay. This game is a punishing experience where you have to time your attacks and plan your routes very carefully. What doesn't help is that this game's checkpoint system in the form of bonfires can at times be unforgiving. As you navigate the world, cutting your way through brutal enemies, you'll occasionally come across bonfires that you can reignite to rest up. Doing this will restore your health and stamina while also giving you an opportunity to level up your stats. Resting at a bonfire will set that bonfire as your checkpoint, so when you die, you will resume your adventure from the last bonfire you rested at. The problem with this is that the bonfires are few and far between, so as you navigate new areas getting bulldozed by enemies that you're newly encountering, you're thrown way back to a bonfire you encountered like 3 years ago. Now obviously I'm exaggerating, but the big kicker of resting and getting revived at bonfires is that every time this happens, all enemies will respawn. So you spend X amount of time trying to fight through a bunch of enemies to get to a boss, but if you die at said boss, or even before it, when you get revived, you gotta go through all those enemies over again. Sometimes it is truly punishing, and for new players, it could be a really discouraging mechanic, which is the main reason why I stopped playing all those times in the past. But once you really start exploring and realizing that the areas often have shortcuts and alternate paths to unlock, the world suddenly becomes far less daunting. Realizing that you don't have to run through as many frustrating enemies by circumventing them with new routes can help with keeping you engaged with Dark Souls, like the game finally decided to throw you a bone after all your hard work. Even still, facing bosses can be a significant challenge. Once you figure out how to navigate an area, how to best tackle the enemies, you have to enter the boss's arena and contend with new challenges, which brings me to my next point. The fighting in this game is different than most games. In most games, you bash the enemies until they drop while occasionally blocking. Well, this is still true until you begin to realize that if an enemy hits you, it hurts. Bad. Even some of the most mundane of enemies, if they catch an opening, can embarrass you. So the combat system in Dark Souls is like a dance. Sometimes you have to wait more than a few seconds for an enemy to use a specific attack before you can get in your offense. This is doubly true with the bosses. You can't simply survive an array of attacks and then take advantage of the boss's glowing weak spot. You have to dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge, and hope that the boss will throw that one attack where it pauses for a few seconds so you can get in one or maybe even two hits to do any sort of damage to its massive health bar. The name of the game is patience, because the second you start playing this game like any other game, you're gonna get smashed. And in Dark Souls, you're gonna get smashed a lot. Over and over and over again. But that's the point. You learn by doing. It's trial by error. You go into a new situation and fight new enemies, and when it kills you, you hopefully learn from it. Sometimes you realize a mistake that you're making, and other times you discover a new opening with your opponent. With bosses in particular, you need to realize that your best strategy is not to be greedy. Killing your enemy with bug bites might take some time, but it's better than dying and starting over. It's tedious and time consuming, but once you overcome a boss and claim victory, you feel so accomplished, and that's where this game keeps pulling you in. It's that hit of dopamine that makes you want to keep going forward. This is Dark Souls. This is why I love it. No challenge feels truly impossible. Yeah, you'll get frustrated, and sometimes after getting killed 4 or 5 times by the same boss, you'll sit there wondering what you're doing wrong. For example, let's talk about the Bed of Chaos. Arguably the most frustrating boss of the game, yet not really the most complicated. To beat the Bed of Chaos, you need to weaken it by striking at points to the left and right of it. After that, you need to jump down to a platform below it to deliver the final blow. Simple and less of a typical boss battle as it is more of an obstacle course. As you go from one point to the next, you need to watch out for a collapsing floor which reveals a pit of instant death below, while also dodging the Bed of Chaos's long arms which will attempt to sweep you into the aforementioned pit of instant death. The difficult part of this boss isn't the fight itself, it's the long road back to it, as well as that final jump. Luckily, as you strike at each point with the Bed of Chaos, it doesn't respawn. It's one of the rare times in the game where your progress is saved. Even still, taking 5 minutes to get back each time, only to either miss the jump or get swatted like a bug, just fuels the frustration. Even the shortcut to this boss is annoying, as it is guarded by a big FU monster that I don't think I even actually ever beat. I just fought it until I was able to slip past it, ran to the Bed of Chaos, and then missed the jump. Probably the most aggravated I'd been during my whole adventure, but once I realized that I had to do that bit of a jump move and successfully landed on the platform, my heart started racing until I delivered the final blow, because even after getting to the platform, I was still in danger of dying. Dark Souls is filled with moments like this, moments where you'll be so frustrated that you'll want to rip your controller in half, but at the same time, a good amount of the frustration comes from the notion that you know it's doable. It's just a few lucky dodges or a few lucky shots, but it's always doable. Nothing is ever impossible. It might feel impossible at first, but once you start to understand the enemy's movements and attacks, things start to make a bit more sense. Sometimes situations can be solved by a bit of grinding and leveling yourself up, or even getting better gear. Making yourself more formidable is another option. By killing enemies, you gather souls and can use it at shots for better armor or gear upgrades, or you can use it at bonfires to level up your stats. Souls is the game's currency, but it's also a form of experience points. Every time you die, you drop all the souls you currently have, but you can go back to where you died to reclaim the souls you lost. However, if you die before reaching it, those souls are gone forever. When dealing with challenges, sometimes the answer isn't always a new strategy. Sometimes you just need to get stronger. So instead of fighting in a place where you're seemingly hitting a wall, you might need to go back to a place that is far more manageable to kill enemies and gather souls. Resting at bonfires will reset the enemies in an area for you to continue farming. Eventually, you will have gathered enough souls so that any new upgrades to your character will make a difference in battle, whether it's by increasing your health or by increasing your endurance to use better gear. This is what Dark Souls offers. It presents challenges and hopes you'll be able to figure out the best path forward. It strains your brain, but you feel stronger as a result. It's so rewarding to overcome these difficult challenges, and that's why I kept going back for more, and why I couldn't put it down once I got rolling. After beating Dark Souls, being baptized in a pool of my own blood thanks to my numerous deaths, I just wanted more. I didn't want to go straight for Dark Souls 2, so I went for something that many people had recommended. Bloodborne. I had spent a lot of time in Bloodborne and made significant progress before randomly falling off. Not quite sure what it was that made me stop, though I do remember overcoming an annoying boss and entering a new area before stopping. Looking back, I'm realizing that I have always enjoyed the challenge of difficult games, beating more than a couple of shooters on its hardest difficulty like Call of Duty 4 and Halo Reach, but also I called games like Ori and the Blind Forest a masterpiece when it came out, a game that was also notoriously difficult, but for the same reasons that I love Dark Souls, I praised Ori and the Blind Forest for, and why I am so excited for the sequel that's just right around the corner. Most recently was Jedi Fallen Order, that not only had similar gameplay functions like the save points respawning enemies, but even the combat was similar to that of Dark Souls. Enemies in that game ask for you to be smarter rather than just bashing them until they're dead. Because of Dark Souls, I've had my eyes opened. I now enjoy a genre of games that I didn't previously think I would enjoy. I was just like so many others, wondering why would anybody want to play a game like this that's just made to punish you. But now I know why. Because facing these challenges and being good enough to overcome them is so incredibly rewarding. Regardless of the challenge going forward, whatever that next hard game will be, because of Dark Souls, I will be ready for that challenge. And so before I go into Sekiro, I wanted to make this video, not only to share my love for difficult games and the works of From Software, but to more or less pump myself up. When setting out to play these games, one needs to be mentally prepared for it. This isn't a kind of game that you could just pick up and play for 10 minutes and then just be done with it. You need to be ready to sink yourself into it, to immerse yourself not only into the story, but in the way the game works for at least an hour or two. So my question for all of you is, do you like to play difficult games? And if so, which one was your favorite? Which was the most challenging? And hey, if you're so inclined, then why don't you check out one of my other videos that might be about something or other? And if you liked this video, if you could please give the video a thumbs up, it helps tremendously and it takes less than a second to do so. Also, if you like my style of videos, then go ahead and subscribe for more awesomeness from yours truly. Thank you so much for listening to me gush about a random video game, and I will see you in the next video.